Hi, I'm Andy Miocza and you're watching A News. Here are the headlines. United Nations Security Council discusses Syria following the collapse of Bashar al-Assad's government. Protests in Tel Aviv as Benjamin Netanyahu takes the stand in corruption case. South Korea's lawmakers pass a bill to investigate president over martial law declaration. Thank you for tuning in. The United Nations Security Council is discussing the situation in Syria following the end of Bashar al-Assad's rule. Member countries seem to be united on preserving Syria's territorial integrity and protecting civilians.
At Russia's request, the United Nations Security Council convened for a closed-door meeting to address the rapidly deteriorating situation in Syria. Prior to the meeting, several council members spoke to the press, sharing their nation's positions on how best to address the crisis.
We are following the situation very closely, and we want to see the situation stabilized as soon as possible. And we do hope that an inclusive political process can be initiated as soon as possible. And the factions and parties in Syria should take the interests of the people as their priority.
In addition to China's concerns, the UK's representative highlighted the significant diplomatic efforts already underway, stressing the need for collaboration among key global and regional players to support the Syrian people and their aspirations for a better future.
These things require a lot of actors, so there's been a huge amount of diplomacy over the weekend with phone calls and meetings. So I think there's a lot of diplomacy going on. It needs to include the P5, it needs to include countries of the region, but ultimately it's about the Syrian people and getting behind them and their aspirations for a better future.
The collapse on Assad's regime has marked the end of a long civil war, but the path to peace remains uncertain as efforts to stabilize the country and rebuild continue.
Meanwhile, Syria's rebel alliance took its first steps toward government transition as the region and the globe keep their eyes peeled for what comes next.
The lightning overthrow of President Bashar al-Assad left Syrians, countries in the region and world powers nervous on Tuesday about what comes next as the rebel alliance took its first steps in a government transition. With the mood in Damascus still celebratory, Assad's Prime Minister Mohammed Jalali on Monday agreed to hand power to the rebel-led Salvation Government, an administration based in the rebel-held territory in the northwest Syria. The main rebel commander Ahmed al-Shara, better known as Abu Muhammad al-Golani, met with Jalali and Vice President Faisal Mekdad to discuss the transitional government. Jalali said the handover could take days to carry out. Al Jazeera television reported the transitional authority would be headed by Mohammed al-Bashir, who has headed the Salvation Government. The steamroller advance of the militia alliance was a generational turning point for the Middle East. In a separate development, Israel's forces entered southern Syria, a move condemned by Egypt, Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia said the move would ruin Syria's chances of restoring security. However, Israel's officials stated that the presence of its troops in Syria is temporary. Regional security sources and officers within the now-fallen Syrian army said heavy Israeli airstrikes continued against military installations and air bases across Syria overnight, destroying thousands of helicopters and jets, as well as Republican Guard sets in and around Damascus. Meanwhile, oil prices rose more than 1% on Monday, partly on concerns that instability in Syria, which is not a major oil producer, could raise regional tensions, analysts said. Qatari diplomats spoke with the Syrian rebels officials on Monday and officially briefed on the developments as regional states raced to open contact with the group. there were tentative signs of a return to order. Syria's banks will reopen on Tuesday, and the oil ministry called on all employees in the sector to head to work on Tuesday, adding that protection will be provided to ensure their safety.
And as the rapid developments in Syria are being analyzed geopolitically and otherwise, many personal tragedies remain in the shadows. Here's a story of just one family's tragedy.
As Syria continues to endure its devastating conflict, the toll on its people grows heavier each day. Akram Shalbout, a father in Jordan, mourns the loss of his son Mustafa, killed in a strike on Homs. The strike is one of many in this ongoing conflict, which continues to escalate as rebel forces advance across the country. The father was overwhelmed with grief when he heard the news of his son Mustafa's death, just minutes after warning him not to visit the village due to ongoing bombings.
I told them, son, don't go. There's a lot of bombings and the village is in a mess. There's bombing here, a bombing there, and the situation is a mess.
Shalbout, who has lived in Jordan for the past decade, said his son had chosen to remain in Syria with his wife and daughter on the outskirts of Homs. Reflecting on his son's death, Shalbout shared the pain of not seeing him for 13 years.
When he was martyred, the sadness was because it's been 13 years that I have not seen him. That's it, he is martyred. May he rest in peace. I can't bring him back. The crying of his siblings made us forget Syria and the regime. When the news of the regime's fall came, the joy wasn't overwhelming. Truly, when they announced the fall of the regime, the mother of Mustafa said, I no longer care about all of Syria.
Meanwhile, Syrian rebels stormed Damascus Sunday, seizing the capital and forcing President Bashar al-Assad to flee to Russia. As the conflict continues to devastate families like Shalbout's, the emotional and human cost of the war is felt deeply across the country.
Over in the U.S., Luigi Mangione, the suspect for the fatal shooting of United Health CEO Brian Thompson in New York, was arraigned and charged with murder. Mangione was arrested at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, ending a 5-day manhunt. Authorities found a loaded ghost gun, fake IDs, and documents indicating potential motives related to hostility toward corporate America. Prosecutors argued Mangione is a flight risk and he was denied bail. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro condemned any glorification of the suspect. Mangione is charged with murder of the medical insurance giant's CEO on Wednesday and 4 other counts, including firearms charges. The Netherlands has announced a 6-month extension of border controls affecting both land and air travel within the Schengen zone. This decision is part of a broader effort to tackle illegal immigration, following similar measures in neighboring Germany.
The Dutch government has introduced stricter border controls starting December 9th. The new controls, set to last for 6 months, aims to curb illegal immigration as part of a package of measures proposed by the right-wing PVV party. This allows Germany's move in September to suspend parts of the Schengen Agreement for the same purpose. The Dutch government is also tightening asylum policies, including limiting asylum permits to 3 years and restricting family reunification for asylum seekers. Minister of Asylum and Migration Marjolein Faber emphasized that the extended mandate for border checks will allow Dutch authorities to manage migration more effectively.
There are always people who always have a reason not to do something, but I won't be deterred. We're taking those measures because I want that inflow to go down, and this is one of the measures to start achieving that, and I will not let that stop me. I have confidence in the Marachus. They are working efficiently. In fact, we work in the same way as our German counterparts.
Despite opposition from some groups, the Dutch government remains determined to implement its migration policies.
Over in Austria, Vienna has announced it's lifting its veto on Romania and Bulgaria becoming full members of the Schengen free travel area. Austria held out on giving the green light, citing concerns over illegal immigration. With air and maritime checks already lifted in March, Romania and Bulgaria are set to fully join Schengen, allowing free movement across land borders as well. The final approval is expected on Thursday at the EU's Justice and Home Affairs Council meeting. In Israel, demonstrations erupted outside a Tel Aviv courthouse as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu took the stand for the first time in his long-running corruption trial. The proceedings continued despite last-minute requests to delay his testimony.
Protests broke out in Tel Aviv today as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu testified in his long-running corruption trial. Crowds gathered outside the district court, demanding accountability amid escalating unrest. Benjamin Netanyahu denies all charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. Benjamin Netanyahu's appearance comes after the court rejected a last-minute request from 12 cabinet ministers to delay his testimony. They cited security concerns following the recent fall of Syrian President Bashar Assad. However, the court dismissed these arguments, as it had done previously when Israeli leaders sought a delay, citing his responsibilities in the ongoing wars in Gaza and Lebanon. The trial, which began in 2020, centers on allegations of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. Critics accuse him of leveraging the Gaza conflict to divert attention from his legal battles, a claim he denies. Despite the controversy, Benjamin Netanyahu remains in office under Israeli law unless convicted by the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, opposition leaders and international bodies, including the ICC, have raised allegations of war crimes, further deepening the political turmoil surrounding his leadership.
Over in South Korea, lawmakers have passed a special council bill to enable an investigation into President Yoon Suk-yeol's short-lived declaration of martial law. Parliament's move comes 3 days after the president survived an impeachment vote.
South Korea's parliament has launched an investigation into President Yoon Suk-yeol's brief declaration of martial law on December 3, a move widely criticized as unconstitutional. Martial law, typically reserved for extreme emergencies, was lifted just 6 hours after being imposed, sparking political turmoil across the nation. The special council bill, passed with 210 votes in favor, aims to uncover the events leading to this unprecedented decision. President Yoon and several senior officials now face treason charges and are under a travel ban. Prime Minister Han Duck-seo and intelligence officials have been summoned for questioning, while former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun, detained for treason, missed a court hearing on Tuesday. The opposition bloc, which failed to impeach Yoon last week, plans another vote. Meanwhile, ruling party members are reportedly considering Yoon's resignation, potentially triggering early elections.
In Georgia, tensions remain high as protests grip Tbilisi, with demonstrators calling for political accountability and reform. Our own Leila Rahimli brings the latest from the ground.
Hello, I am reporting on the current developments in Georgia, where the political situation is intensifying ahead of the upcoming presidential election. The primary focus this week is the election of new president, scheduled for Saturday, 14 December. This election is historic, as it will be the first time in Georgia's history that the president is chosen by an electoral college instead of the direct popular vote. The ruling Georgian Dream Party has put forward Mikhail Kavelashvili, a former football player and MP, as the sole candidate. With the ruling Georgian Dream Party dominating the electoral college, his approval seems inevitable. The Speaker of Parliament, Shalva Papoashvili, has assured that the Central Election Commission will oversee the process in the Parliament building to ensure a smooth election. Opposition voices, however, are growing louder. The opposition TV channel Mutavari Arhi claims that the government is planning to impose a state of emergency and curfew on 14 December to suppress dissent. They also allege that the authorities aim to clear Rustaveli Avenue of protests by 12 December to prevent demonstrations during the election period. Adding to the tension, the ruling party has targeted the current president Salome Zurabishvili. If Zurabishvili refuses to step down, Georgian Dream may open a criminal case against her. This development underscores the deepening political crisis in the country. Kavalashvili, the sole presidential candidate, has openly criticized Zurabishvili, accusing her of insulting and neglecting the Georgian constitution and continuing to violate it today. He has vowed to restore the dignity of the presidency. Meanwhile, the European Union has expressed grave concerns about the situation in Georgia. EU Ambassador Pavel Herchinsky has warned that the recent clash between police and protesters, coupled with the government's decision to suspend EU accession talks until 2028, could lead to sanctions against Georgian officials. Herchinsky has mentioned that these measures could include suspending visa-free travel for Georgian citizens. He emphasized that the EU cannot ignore the violence and brutally displayed in recent weeks. Mamuka Midznaraza, the executive secretary of Georgian Dream, defended the government's actions, stating that the suspending EU talks was necessary to prevent unrest and protect national interest. He accused the opposition of trying to delegitimize government institutions and incite instability before the new year or other international political milestones. The autumn session of parliament ends on 13 December and the presidential election will take place on 14 December in Georgia. If all goes as planned, the inauguration of the new president will be held on 29 December. However, the protest, opposition, accusations and international security, the political landscape remains tense. And this is the latest updates for now. I am Leyla Rahimli reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
That was our Leyla Rahimli with an update on political developments in Georgia. In other news, Indian Defense Minister Rajnath Singh met his Russian counterpart Andrei Belousov in Moscow. Singh reaffirmed India's commitment to enhancing its close ties with Russia, while Belousov emphasized that Russia is satisfied with the high level of military cooperation between the two countries. The Nobel Peace Prize ceremony took center stage in Oslo City Hall. This year, the Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to the Japanese Nihon Hidankyo organization. Representing the group of atomic bomb survivors in Japan, co-chairperson Terumi Tanaka received the diploma and medal, followed by the Nobel Prize lecture on behalf of the organization. Nihon Hidankyo was recognized for its unwavering efforts toward a world free of nuclear weapons. The Nobel Prizes in medicine, physics, chemistry, literature, and economic sciences will be awarded in Stockholm's concert hall later this evening. In tech news, Google announced that it has overcome a key challenge in quantum computing with a new generation of chip, solving a computing problem in 5 minutes that would take a classical computer more time than the history of the universe.
Like other tech giants such as Microsoft and International Business Machines, Alphabet's Google is chasing quantum computing because it promises computing speeds far faster than today's fastest systems. While the math problem solved by the company's Santa Barbara, California Quantum Lab does not have commercial applications, Google hopes quantum computers will one day solve problems in medicine, battery chemistry, and artificial intelligence that are out of reach for today's computers. The results released Monday came from a new chip called Willow that has 105 qubits, which are the building blocks of quantum computers. Qubits are fast but error-prone because they can be jostled by something small as a subatomic particle from events in outer space. As more qubits are packed onto a chip, those errors can add up to make the chip no better than a conventional computer chip. So since the 1990s, Scientists have been working on quantum error correction. In a paper published in the journal Nature on Monday, Google said that it has found a way to string together the Willow chip's qubits so that error rates go down as the number of qubits go up. The company also says it can correct errors in real time, a key step forward making its quantum machines practical.
Well, that's all we have for now. Thank you for joining us and keep watching A News.